Hey everyone, it's Alan Shimel, DevOps.com, and we're here at AppianWorld 2018 down at the Fontainebleau in Miami Beach, Florida. Joined for this session here from AppianWorld with two folks. We have Denise
Knabjian
of OCC. And Denise, what does OCC stand for?
The Options Clearing Corporation.
Yep. And then joining Denise from Appian is Mike Heffner. And Mike, why don't you tell our audience your role at Appian?
Yeah, happy to. I'm the global industry lead for banking, capital markets, and insurance.
Fantastic. So Denise, OCC is obviously an Appian customer,
Yes.
has been. Forget AppianWorld for the moment. Can you give our audience just kind of a baseline of how OCC uses Appian in your business?
Sure. OCC brought in Appian as a result of some of the regulatory changes that were happening in our industry. So in 2012, OCC was designated a systemically important financial market utility, or a SIFMU, which required us to have better demonstrability of our policies, procedures, controls. And so we were looking for a business process management solution that could help us with that effort. So that's how we brought Appian into our daily life.
Excellent. So it was a BPM solution that drove Appian adoption. And there are plenty of BPM providers out there, obviously. Would you mind sharing what was it about Appian that made them the choice for your BPM needs?
There were a few factors, including the fact that it was low code, that we thought that through the collaboration between our business and technical teams, which we have a tight partnership, that we can easily deploy solutions in a rapid manner. And I think the other big thing, just being in the financial services industry, is the level of data and information that's contained, the security controls that are in place. It was one of the first applications that we went to the cloud in, so that was a big step for OCC.
Absolutely. Mike, were you involved back in the selection process, or was this after the fact?
I wasn't involved in the selection process, but the partnership with OCC is I consider it very strong, and we have had a number of checkpoints, call them steering committees, where we really collaborate around the things OCC is trying to accomplish next and the role Appian can play.
You know, you used an interesting word there, partnership, and that's something that I hear, unfortunately, not too often, but when I do hear it, it usually indicates a very strong vendor-customer relationship. And it's not the usual, I'm a vendor, I sell you something, you're a buyer, you buy something. It truly is a partnership, because oftentimes a company like Appian will get more. Well, money's always good, but you will get more out of their feedback, out of understanding their roadmap to help you define your roadmap.
That's very, very true. I mean, my personal history is I'm a former Appian customer.
Okay.
And part of my relationship with Appian, becoming an employee, was actually driven by that initial partnership and the sense that I got that the technology was different, but the people, the culture were also different. And at the end of the day, it's about trust. I mean, you're trying to transform your business. You're trusting that your technology vendor can help, and you create the right relationships and the right rapport to actually go on a journey together.
And that partnership is key. There's great care and concern that has been afforded to OCC by our Appian partners at all levels. And it's not just a sale of software and move on. We have our weekly outreach with our representative. We have user group meetings with many partners. We visit the site, the headquarters, once a year, I think. We've been there the last couple of years. So it is ongoing, and it's collaboration. It's sharing ideas and information both ways, really.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I'm just stepping out of a presentation where OCC here at the Fontainebleau at AppianWorld was presenting their Create an App in a Day program, which is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, I personally just judged the hackathon, the Appian hackathon with Steve Wozniak. Just saying. But and it was interesting. One of my suggestions was next year they do an all-nighter here and let people
I love that.
build an app right here. Right, at AppianWorld. It's, 2.5 days?
Sure.
That's enough time for someone to build something.
Absolutely.
And make that the price.
Well, that presentation, your presentation, was they started it. There was a tiny bit of pre-work. There was definitely a framework as to the scope of the application, but started at 9, functional application at 5.
Right. So our lead developer, Adil Javed, right, did the presentation, but basically we sequester all of the resources, our architect, our business analysts, our developers, our QA staff, and go through the entire process. And at the end of the day, we have something that we're in a position to deploy.
You know what? Having seen some of these kinds of apps that are built in that kind of time frame, too many people hear low code and they think low sophistication or low complexity. Yeah. And let me tell you, I just came out of a room with the finalists. There are some killer apps.
It's a rethink, right?
Yeah.
It's a rethink towards a modern technology platform where you're actually getting the speed and the power, right?
Absolutely. And it's, speed, power, and quality,
yes.
right? And security. And in
security,
so
agility,
I think security
right?
is part of quality, right? And that's an important threesome, right? Because usually they say 2 out of 3 ain't bad. But if you could get 3 out of 3, you're doing really well. So OCC's been a customer now, what, about 3 years, I think?
Just under 3.
Yeah. This is not your first AppianWorld, or it is?
This is my second AppianWorld. So I joined our process innovation team about a year ago. So it's a fairly new space for me. I've been with the organization 21 years, so a lot of experience on the business side and hybrid technology roles. So it's been great being here and learning from all of the different partners and customers as well.
Mike, is this your second, third AppianWorld?
I think it's my fourth.
Fourth?
Yeah. And they keep getting better. It's pretty amazing.
So, a bunch of announcements here in Miami this week, Miami Beach this week, and so many of them around sort of this, we want to call it next-gen technology, cutting-edge stuff, whatever you want. But what kind of, from your point of view, Denise, what has kind of caught your eye or been really important for you?
One of the things that we're looking at is how we use Appian, right? Not just for some of the workflow management applications and things like that, but really as an aggregator for a number of different systems. So the thing that was most interesting to me was the new call center functionality.
Yeah.
So, we have some existing systems in place that we think might be able to be easily replaced using that functionality, and again, drawing our internal customers to one centralized location. That helps us for a number of reasons, including auditability and control demonstrability in the work that we do. So really looking forward to that. Integration designer, right? Being able to show our our end users, our product owners, what things look like as we develop. So I think that's a huge benefit that's coming in 18.2.
Absolutely.
Mike, what about you? What do you think has been kind of the big theme stories here?
Yeah, so for me, I spend a lot of time thinking about where FS&I is going, and the industry is clearly in a transformation. And I think there are 3 major trends that are happening. One is around, what will machine learning and AI, where will that take us, and what are the opportunities there? And I think there's a lot of excitement, and obviously the things we heard about sentiment analysis, the things we heard about being flexible to deal with multiple AI integrations, I think is really important there. The other second major trend in FS&I generally is this drive towards open API banking. And I think we're extremely well aligned to be one in a large complex architecture, to be a critical component of that architecture and allow our customers to really think about innovation as the tying together of legacy and new ideas, and then leveraging Appian as the orchestration layer, call it the glue. And then the third major trend, I think in FS&I generally, is I think we're getting serious about thinking about data as a corporate asset.
I hope so.
And the lifeblood of transformation and innovation. And I think much of what we heard about today and yesterday here at the conference has been about how do we manage data more effectively, and Appian can play a really important role there.
Agreed. One of the things that when I talk to people about DevOps is, people tend to think, oh, it's for the unicorns, it's for startups. And now they're starting to understand it's what we call for horses, not just unicorns, but it's for large enterprises. But within the large enterprise verticals, finance, financials, financial services is probably the leader, right? And I've seen this worldwide with banks across the globe, from Asia to Europe, EMEA to here in the States. And I think it's because the whole financial sector is under such pressure to keep up, right? As we move away from a brick and mortar kind of base to an app world, and more so than in other sectors even.
It's interesting because we don't, having driven change, and we've both been in industry for a very long time, it feels like there's so much more that can be done, and it also feels like we're not at the leading edge of innovation. We're following. Actually, I did a keynote with Martin Resch from Bank of the West this morning, and I asked him that question. And he's doing a lot of transformational work. And I asked him, are we leading others or are we following? And he felt fairly strongly that we were following.
So I will tell you and I'm not in the financial sector, I'm just an observer. Are you following Google, Netflix, Etsy? Yeah, those guys are bleeding edge. No one ever accused the financial sector of being bleeding edge, right? That's not who you are.
Nor necessarily do you want your
to be.
financial
I don't
sector
want my
being
right?
bleeding edge.
I mean, because what is the biggest factor in as a consumer, as a customer? I want stability. I want
Customer protection.
customer
yes.
protection paramount. So I don't think we'd want our financial services companies to be bleeding edge, but they're setting the mark on so many, and I could cite you a dozen different banks I've spoken. Not only banks, I'm talking Her Majesty's Tax Service in UK, the South African Revenue Office, right in South Africa. They're doing amazing things in the cloud, with the web, with apps that would be like, wow,
Yeah, I think sometimes you feel like you're catching up, right? You're playing catch up, but there's so many opportunities available to be innovative and to be a thought leader in the space. I think our developers and our analysts were very creative in how we're approaching and tackling some pretty tough, requests that are coming through. And being able to leverage that on top of Appian has been really,
Well, I
really...
think Appian's an enabler for
Absolutely,
that, right?
absolutely.
You want to run as fast as you can. You want the security. You want all those things. To go build that from, the old way from scratch with code, good luck. Right?
And with the proper governance, right, and satisfying our auditors and our regulators, it's a key component for us.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise you'll get caught up in it. Let me bring up another buzzword that I've heard here a bit and get your thoughts on that, AI.
It's definitely the topic of the
Du
week,
jour?
du jour, and of the week.
Maybe the year?
Du semaine, yeah. So I think it really, if we go back to the data conversation, so a lot of our conversations, now we don't do AI yet, we're still heavily Appian, but the next step that we're taking in our digital transformation journey is RPA. So we're looking into that, and it really goes back to data first. So we're trying to plan how we're going to use this data in the future. So building our applications with that in mind, so that we're in a position when we're really fully able to leverage and implement AI, that we're prepared for it and that we're handling the data, in a manageable way.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Our industry can be accused of, going after the latest shiny object.
Yeah,
A lot.
shiny trinket syndrome.
A lot. And I think, RPA was probably that the last few years. And I think we've seen mixed results. If you solely focus on RPA without the orchestration layer, you end up with things like bad bots without visibility into outcomes. And, those are bad things that can be controlled by having a more strategic architecture that includes Appian. I think I'm not quite ready to jump to AI. Everybody's using AI, and it's, I think, become that next shiny object. I think machine learning is the next evolution, where you're still leveraging the machine, right, to discover patterns, but someone still programmed the machine, right?
So
And I can
explain for my audience,
Yeah.
give me your distinction between AI and machine learning,
So-
because we're confused.
Yeah, everyone's confused, and
Mhm.
I don't want to add to the confusion.
As
So
you
I
see
think
it.
there's a progression, and I think Machine learning is still directed by a human. So there's a programmer that set parameters around where to execute. Like, look for particular patterns in data that allow for decision making around credit, right? Beyond the traditional credit scores, more than likely initially to reject versus than to approve. But there's still a programming event involved. To me, AI is truly autonomous, where the program itself is writing its next behavior.
Fair enough.
Okay.
So I happened to catch this morning, Gartner put out a press release, and it was regarding a report they just released, that they expect AI to have a business impact of $1.2 trillion, I think in 2019, so next year. Look, you know how analysts are, right? They love making predictions, and when the time comes, they scurry, right? When they don't come out. But $1.2 trillion is a lot of money in anyone's book.
I don't know what the number is, but I can tell you it's important, and it is where things are going next, for sure. Yeah. But we're still talking financial services. We're talking specifically in this conversation, the Options Clearing Corp, which is at the center, whether folks realize it or not. It's a true stopgap to avoiding major.
No, it's infrastructure. It's critical infrastructure.
It's risk management at all levels.
Yeah.
Yep, that's what we do.
I had a chance to sit down with Matt Calkin, the CEO of Appian, yesterday, and we spoke a bit about AI, and he said something that I think was really kind of smart, and I sum it up this way: just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
Right? And again, shiny trinket syndrome in our industry. We'll find something like an AI, we latch onto it, and we're going to use it in the whole stack, from the top to the bottom. Where it may really wind up being that AI is really good for some of the machine learning kind of stuff you're saying, that really helps lower risk and manage risk in the OCC scenario. But it means that, instead of the whole stack, we just use it right here.
Right.
Exactly.
Right? And it does a great job right here. When you try to use it here, it's not ready yet. You get trouble.
We use that phrase a lot, actually, and I think it's about moving forward in a responsible way for your organization. Again, when you talk about customer protections and the stability of the financial markets, we take that very seriously. So it's not about trying to be the first one to do it, right? It's about figuring out where and when and how to utilize it to its fullest potential.
Absolutely. And it's also about future-proofing, because, what's next? There's something next. We don't know what that is yet, but it's coming. But at some level, it's going to require orchestration of a transaction that has a start, a middle, and an end. And as long as you have an orchestration layer that allows you to plug and play what's next, that's where you want to invest. That's where you begin to future-proof, right?
Yep. So Denise, you mentioned earlier, Appian was one of the first kind of cloud initiatives that you undertaken at OCC. How would you characterize the use of cloud at OCC? Is it still just limited to the Appian?
No, it's not anymore. I think that that world has changed, especially in the last 2 to 3 years. So while that was kind of one of the first applications that we leveraged in the cloud, OCC has taken a much more dedicated stance towards moving towards the cloud, or cloud first. We have a lot of legacy applications and technology, and I think that as we look to the future, that has to be the foundation of what we do.
What about containers, Kubernetes, Docker, these kinds of things? Anything happening?
Not at this point.
Mike, what about in the broader, financial industry? Has that really kind of become a factor yet?
Not a major factor, but it's emerged as, listen, the question comes up more than once. You start paying attention.
Yeah.
And I think Appian as a company is really good at listening to its customers and paying attention, even though it may be an early trend.
Yep, fair enough. Guys, we're about out of time. I apologize, but I told you it goes really quick. But I'm going to give you each a chance to close off big idea from Appian World, or one thing you want to leave with our viewers? Lesson learned here or something?
Well, I think two things, right? Going back to the partnership, I think one of the best things about Appian and its employees is the listening, right? So there's a willingness to listen and then to implement, and we see that in some of the features and functionality that's coming through. And then for us, it's about integrations, right? How do we extend the platform? Again, orchestration layer, that is a key focus for us in the coming months and coming years.
Absolutely. You know, I'm highly focused on FS&I and the transformation that's happening in our industry right now. And I see a lot of leaders, business leaders, that are somewhat stuck, right? That are trying to figure out what digital transformation actually means to them. Some think, you know, it's a website and maybe we're done with it, right? But it's not. And I think it's becoming more and more front and center for folks to actually understand what it means. My message is just don't wait, engage. You don't have to start large, you can start small, but engage.
Excellent. Denise, thanks for being our guest today. Mike, a pleasure. Thank you for being here. This is Alan Shimel for DevOps.com at Appian World 2018, Miami Beach, Florida. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.